There are places that were built for laughter, and then there are places that remember it. On the edge of New Orleans, past rusted gates and shattered turnstiles, sits a theme park that time forgot. Once called Jazzland and later Six Flags New Orleans, this was a place of roller coasters, cotton candy, and summer screams. But in 2005, Hurricane Katrina didn't just flood the city, it drowned the park. The water rose, the ride stopped. And when it finally drained away, no one ever came back. Today, the coasters still stand, trains frozen mid-track, mascots peeling in the sun, wind howling through empty stations like something still waiting to board. But Six Flags New Orleans isn't just abandoned, it's claimed by rot, by silence, by stories of strange lights, shadows moving between rides, and people who swear this place doesn't like being forgotten. And buried beneath the cracked pavement and flooded buildings are the real stories, the accidents, the tragedies, and the eerie aftermath of a park that never got to close properly. And tonight, we're stepping through those gates. This is Death Kiss Traveler, the podcast that brings you history, horror, and hauntings at amusement parks. My name is Marissa, your morbidly curious host. Thank you for listening to another episode. Hit that subscribe button, and if you love this episode, please give me a 5-star review. I really appreciate it. Follow me on TikTok or Instagram at Death Kiss Traveler Podcast for photos of this episode and others and ride accidents throughout the year. Now buckle up. This is the full ride of Six Flags New Orleans. There is something primeval and wrong about the ruins of Six Flags New Orleans. The air is thick with the scent of mold and wet concrete, and every step crunches over cracked asphalt and broken glass. Smilax thorns twist like living chains around skeletal remains of once cheerful kiddie rides, their colors muted to rust and rot. Somewhere in the shadows, alligators glide silently through the stagnant water, and wild boars snuffle at the edge of the overgrown pathways. They claim what humans abandoned. The Looney Tunes figures, once symbols of joy, now leer from beneath sagging, graffiti-scarred concession stands. Their painted smiles are chipped and streaked with black mold, grotesque in their misplaced cheer. A carousel lies frozen mid-spin, horses frozen in time with empty eyes, as if they too remember the screams and laughter that once filled the air and the hurricane that stole it all. There are roller coasters that stretch skyward. The wind whistles through the steel, producing a hollow, whimpering sound that echoes like the cries of children long gone. There are homes nearby, built in hope of proximity to excitement, now lie in silence. Their yards are overgrown, their windows reflecting nothing but the twisted playground of decay. Every year that the park stands empty, it drags the neighborhood further into its shadow. A slow erosion of dreams and value alike. Walking through this place, it's easy to imagine the ghosts of the past. The carnival music that suddenly fades into the night, the echo of footsteps on wet pavement, the sensation of being watched by figures long decayed but never gone. Six Flags New Orleans is not just abandoned, it's alive in its own grotesque, reclaimed way. And its silence, its whispers of a story of joy turned to ruin, ambition drowned in a city that I'll never forget. Before Six Flags, before the rust and the decay, there was Jazzland, a dream that never quite woke. It opened its gates in 2000, a late attempt to capture the soul of New Orleans in concrete, steel, and paint. The city wanted more than parades and jazz clubs. It wanted a monument to its culture, a playground for families, that celebrated the music, the colors, the rhythm of New Orleans. And the park was ambitious, sprawling across 140 acres of reclaimed wetlands, a place that promised both excitement and wonder. Its theme zones, Mardi Gras, Cajun Country, Pontchartrain Beach, Kids Carnival, and Good Time Gardens, were meant to immerse visitors in the city's magic. Each ride, each pathway was designed to echo the heartbeat of New Orleans, vibrant, chaotic, and alive. When Jazzland opened in 2000, it included several core rides. The Mega Zeph was a large wooden coaster with steel supports. It was the park's signature ride. And then there was a Wild Mouse steel coaster called the Muskrat Scrambler. Say that 5 times fast. Rex's Rail Runner, a junior family steel coaster, the Zydeco Scream, a boomerang shuttle coaster, and they had some water rides like a log flume. There were also various spinning rides, carousel, family attractions, but Jazzland never quite felt alive. Attendance was unpredictable, and the heat of Louisiana summer beat down relentlessly on the concrete decks. Families came, yes, but they left exhausted. Their pockets lighter, their memories dimmed, the rides that were supposed to thrill often creaked under the weight of poor maintenance, and whispers of mismanagement trailed through the park like a shadow. Even in its early days, there was a sense of unease, a fragility beneath the paint and steel. The park's ambitions were larger than its means, and the promise of New Orleans magic began to feel like a mirage. By 2002, Jazzland teetered on the edge of collapse, bankrupt and begging for salvation. It was a prelude to the corporate takeover that would transform it into Six Flags New Orleans. By 2002, Jazzland's fleeting dream had begun to crumble. They had poor attendance, relentless summer heat, and mounting debt that left the park grasping for life. It was then that Six Flags, a corporate titan of thrill rides and branded chaos, stepped in. Not to save the park, but to transform it into something recognizable, something they could control. They purchased the lease from the city for a reported $22 million, assuming control of the park already haunted by its own failures. The deal was meant to last 75 years, though even then it felt more like a pact with fate than a simple business transaction. Six Flags injected money, added their signature rides, and plastered the familiar faces of DC Comics and Looney Tunes across the grounds, as if to erase the memory of Jazzland and its fragile, fading magic. But no amount of paint, rebranding, or corporate polish could fully mask what had come before. Jazzland's echoes lingered in the wind, in the squeak of the rides, in the cracked concrete pathways. Six Flags acquired a park hoping to build excitement. But in doing so, they inherited the whispers of failure, the unease that had always haunted the land. A prelude to the darkness far greater than anyone could have imagined. Six Flags took over Jazzland and tried to breathe life into it, painting over the cracks of failure with bright colors and branded smiles. The park reopened as Six Flags New Orleans, a place that promised the thrill of loops, drops, and laughter. But the city's heartbeat was never fully captured. Attendance was modest, the Louisiana heat oppressive, and the whispers of Jazzland's ghost seemed to linger among the rides. And since this is Death Kiss Traveler, we have to talk about the accidents. On July 10th, 2003, 52-year-old Rosa Donaldson was helping her 4-year-old grandson into the Joker's jukebox when suddenly it began moving. She was hit by one of the ride vehicles in the head and another in her abdomen, and later died at Lakeland Hospital from blunt force internal injuries. After the accident, the park installed mirrors so ride operators could see around the blind spots and added a safety announcement to warn guests before the ride started. Then came August of 2005, a month that would forever scar New Orleans and transformed the park from corporate experiment into frozen nightmare. Hurricane Katrina, a storm of unimaginable fury, swept through the city. I remember watching this on the news, and it was absolutely tragic. With over 18,000 confirmed deaths, winds tore at the trees, but it was the water that devoured the park. 10 feet of murky, debris-laden floodwaters swallowed the rides. The paths, the buildings, everything was gone. Roller coasters, once the pride of thrill seekers, stood half submerged. Concession stands collapsed, their colors leached into the brown water. The music of the park, the laughter, the carnival tunes, was extinguished in an instant. In the weeks that followed, Six Flags surveyed the damage and made a cold corporate decision. The park would never reopen. After Hurricane Katrina, Six Flags walked into a nightmare. The park was completely submerged. Rides twisted or destroyed, electrical systems ruined, and the very foundation of the park cracked and rotted. To rebuild would have required tens of millions of dollars, essentially starting over from scratch. Six Flags faced a cold financial reality. The park had never been profitable. Even before the hurricane, attendance had been inconsistent, and the surrounding area struggled with economic challenges. Pouring more money into a park that might never succeed was a risk too great, even for the corporate giant. Six Flags determined the value of assets of the storm destroyed $32.5 million. As of September of 26, they had collected $11.5 million from the insurance company, and in 2007, they had received $24.4 million. As far as I can see, there was still a lawsuit for the $17.5 million in coverage that was remaining, and I couldn't find if that had been paid or not. The city of New Orleans still technically owned the property, and Six Flags had a 75-year lease. They didn't exactly break the contract. They defaulted on their lease by choosing not to reopen or invest further. Legally, the city eventually reclaimed control of the site in 2009. Six Flags walked away, leaving behind an abandoned waterlogged amusement park, overgrown with vines and haunted by the ghosts of both Jazzland and Six Flags Dreams. So while Six Flags had a long-term agreement, the combination of extreme damage, financial risk, and a troubled location, making rebuilding impossible, the contract remained. When Katrina's floodwaters receded, the park was unrecognizable. There was steel twisted, wood rotted, and electrical systems that were ruined beyond repair. The rides that had once thrilled visitors, Batman, Zydeco, Megazeph, and the log flumes, stood like drowned skeletons, frozen in decay. It is worth noting that some of the rides were salvageable. Six Flags over the next few years relocated several of them to other parks across the country, which did make the city angry. They received insurance money, they moved the rides, and they just left everything else. They took Batman the ride and several other roller coasters. They dismantled them and shipped them to theme parks like Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. Batman was renamed Goliath. There was the Bayou Blaster and Sonic Slam, twin drop tower attractions that were taken down and moved to Great Escape. They were rebuilt as Sasquatch. The Roadrunner Express, a junior coaster, was removed in 2009 and relocated to Six Flags Magic Mountain. Smaller rides like the Muskrat Scrambler were sold off to independent parks or storage, though many eventually ended up just scrapped. With each ride that was carried away, it wasn't just steel and bolts, but it was the hope of a revival that the city had clung to in the aftermath of the storm. The city watched powerless as the remnants of laughter and joy were reclaimed by Six Flags, leaving only rusted frames and memories behind. It wasn't illegal. The lease allowed Six Flags to remove assets they had installed, but legality did nothing to soothe that stink. To New Orleans, it felt like betrayal, a final severing of the connection between ambition and reality. Some rides lingered for years. Some are still there, rusting in place, slowly reclaimed by nature and reborn in different forms thousands of miles away. The Zydeco Zinger was a classic wave swinger, a tall tower with chains and seats that spun riders in ever-winding circles. After Katrina, the main tower structure still stood, but the swings themselves were stripped away over time by scrappers and vandals. Leaving only the skeletal frame, rust slowly crept up the steel, and decorative panels that once showed off New Orleans-themed art, they were peeled or disappeared entirely. Then there was a pirate ship. Once a swinging ship ride that rocked families back and forth, the Lafitte's pirate ship survived the flood, with its main frame still upright. But after years of exposure to saltwater and neglect, the ride has become a rust-streaked reminder of what the park used to be. The ride had paid homage to Jean Lafitte, the legendary local pirate, tying the ride into the New Orleans' own culture's mythology. But there it just sat, forgotten to time. But we can't forget the Big Easy Ferris wheel. The towering Ferris wheel known as the Big Easy was one of the most iconic remnants of the park. Though the gondolas have been stripped over time, the massive wheel structure remained upright for years, silhouetted against the sky like a rusted halo over the abandoned Midway. At least one gondola was removed by an artist with city permission and repurposed into a memorial sculpture in the New Orleans East. But the main wheel structure itself stood as the last surviving piece from the amusement park. And the carousel, the Mardi Gras Menagerie, was once a beautiful themed carousel filled with colorful horses and Mardi Gras imagery. After Katrina, the canopy collapsed, the horses were removed, and vandals and scrappers took most of the decorative wood and metal, ultimately leaving behind a barren skeletal frame. And the Mad Rex was a high-energy wipeout ride where riders spun and tilted in big, sweeping arcs. After Katrina, its basic structural frame remained, heavy, stationary, and rusted. Long after its moving parts were damaged or stripped away, for years it was a stark example of how even the large carnival rides can degrade when abandoned. For urban explorers and photographers, these rides became symbols, relics of an amusement park that never got to say goodbye. The silence around them contrasted sharply with the roaring crowds and the music they once hosted. The park became a ghostly skeleton, not just of buildings and pathways, but of the rides themselves, reminders of joy and adrenaline that now only exist elsewhere, disconnected from the land where they once thrilled crowds. When Six Flags New Orleans shut down after Hurricane Katrina, it didn't close like other parks. There were no farewell crowds, no last rides, no final night of the lights going dark. The water rushed in, and everything stopped. Since then, that park has become a magnet for urban explorers, photographers, and thrill seekers who slip through broken fences to walk the silent Midway. And almost all of them say the same thing. This place doesn't feel empty. Some explorers claim when they stand near the old ride stations, they hear something that doesn't belong there anymore. Soft voices, distant laughter, the kind of sound that shouldn't exist in a park that's been abandoned for nearly 20 years. Others say the rides themselves seem restless. They describe hearing metal clank, chain shifting, and low mechanical groans, as if the park is trying to start itself back up, even though there's no power, no operators, and no guests. Photographers have captured strange images here too. Blurry figures in the background, shadows where no one was standing, unexplainable light streaks in buildings that haven't had electricity since 2005. I will post some of these pictures online. I love them. Some dismiss it as dust or reflection or decay, but others believe the park holds on to something deeper. Because when a place is filled with joy for years, and then it's suddenly flooded, abandoned, and left to rot, that emotional energy doesn't just disappear. Several explorers interviewed by haunted location tour companies and ruin photography blogs have described hearing voices and laughter near the Ferris wheel platform or feeling suddenly watched when standing under that wheel. Multiple reports have experienced an abrupt drop in sound, as if the area becomes unnaturally quiet. The story usually goes like this. When people walk through the empty midways, it feels creepy. But when they reach the Ferris wheel, the air feels heavier. And that's when the sounds start. Not loud, not clear, just enough to make people turn around. We all know that New Orleans is already a hot spot for the paranormal. New Orleans wasn't built on dry land. It was built on stories, on tragedy, and on centuries of death. Long before the jazz, the beads, and the parades, this city was a place of disease, fires, and sudden loss. Yellow fever, cholera, hurricanes, thousands of lives taken in moments, often buried in rows of above-ground tombs. Add that to the melting pot of cultures, French, Spanish, African, Haitian, each carrying their own beliefs about spirits, ancestors, and the thin line between the living and the dead. Voodoo rituals, cemetery rites, whispered legends. It all shaped a city that doesn't just remember its dead, it feels them. Then there's the architecture, century-old buildings with iron balconies and creaking floors, cobblestone streets shrouded in mist, narrow alleyways where shadows twist. Every corner seems to watch, every courtyard holds a story of love, betrayal, or sudden death. Maybe that's why I love New Orleans. Even the geography adds to the eeriness. Swamps, fogs, and rising waters creates illusions of the night. Footsteps, whispers, the creaks and the shutters. The city itself becomes a storyteller. In New Orleans, ghosts aren't just folklore. They're woven into the streets, the air, and the history. And if you listen closely, sometimes you can hear them just behind you. My biggest question with this story is, should Six Flags have paid to get out of their contract? This is one of those questions where the legal answer and the moral answer don't line up. Legally, Six Flags didn't have to. After Katrina, the park was declared a total loss. The flooding wasn't just cosmetic. The saltwater had destroyed electrical systems, ride motors, wiring, foundations, and safety controls. And under the lease of Six Flags, they were allowed to walk away if the park was no longer operable due to a natural disaster. From a corporate standpoint, paying hundreds of millions to rebuild a park in a flood-prone area made no financial sense. But morally, that's where it gets uncomfortable. Because Six Flags didn't just abandon a park, they left behind a park. Massive ruined structures in the middle of New Orleans East. They were a visual reminder of Katrina's devastation and a community that never got closure. Now for nearly 2 decades, that rusting Ferris wheel, the stripped carousel, and the skeletal ride sat there like a wound that never healed. Not just an abandoned park, a frozen moment of disaster. Could Six Flags have paid to terminate the lease, demolish the park, and give the land back clean? Yes. They could have written a check and erased the ruins. They didn't, because financially, it was cheaper to leave it to rot. And that's why so many people feel uneasy about it. Six Flags didn't create Hurricane Katrina, but they did choose to leave the aftermath standing. That choice is part of why Six Flags New Orleans feels haunted. Not just by ghosts, but by neglect. And I ask the question, why wasn't the park rebuilt or bought by someone else? After Katrina's waters receded, Six Flags New Orleans wasn't just damaged, it was destroyed. We've talked about this. The rides, the buildings, the midway, they were all soaked and rusted and twisted by the saltwater. Fixing it would have costed hundreds of millions of dollars. And the land itself really wasn't worth it. Building it on low-lying, swampy grounds was a recipe for disaster. This place was known to flood easily, even in a mild storm. There were many investors that looked at the wreckage and saw risk. Even if they rebuilt it, the area had lost population. The infrastructure was weak, and the park would be competing with established attractions nearby. Years have passed since Hurricane Katrina claimed Six Flags. But the park hasn't been forgotten, nor has it truly disappeared. The rides, once filled with laughter and screams of thrill, stand frozen in time. The Ferris wheel leans in the wind, its gondolas stripped and silent. The carousel frame remains, a skeletal memory of music and joy that once spun endlessly in the air. Even the wave swinger, the pirate ship, the coasters, they remain, rusted and broken, as if the park itself refuses to let go. Walking past the abandoned midways, explorers say you can hear the faint echoes of the past and laughter that isn't there. The park's story ended not with a bang, but with silence. And yet the silence itself has a voice. In New Orleans, the city of cemeteries, voodoo, and whispered legends, this kind of haunting doesn't need a ghost to feel real. It's a place where loss and memory cling to every beam, every corroded ride, every empty ticket booth. The joy that once radiated here now twists into something darker, something that lingers long after the crowds have gone. So as the sun sets over the overgrown midway and the wind whispers through the rusted frames, remember this: Six Flags New Orleans isn't just abandoned. It remembers the echoes of laughter, of screams, of life itself. They're still here, trapped in the ruins, waiting for someone to listen. And in a city built on history, grief, and the stories of those who came before, perhaps that's the most haunting thing of all. Thank you for listening to Death Kiss Traveler. This podcast is written by me, Marissa, produced by Sunkissed Traveler Travel Agency. Are you thinking of a vacation? Maybe a trip to New Orleans? See show notes for details or visit sun-kissedtraveler.com. I will see you next week for a true crime podcast like you've never heard before.